is all in when it comes to punishing Russia for its invasion of Ukraine? Or is it? Is the United States-led anti-Russia coalition really hitting Russia where it hurts Moscow the most? Or is the United States playing it safe along with its European partners? Is Washington minimizing the damage its anti-Russia crusade has on the American economy and energy security? Evidently, it is. Why is that? Because while Europe suffers miserably after having been choked by Russia of essential natural gas supplies, it is continuing to import large amounts of Russian uranium. Same is the case with the United States. The West is waging a convenient economic war against Russia while exempting Russian nuclear fuel from the purview of sanctions. On Monday, Germany made it distinctly clear that it cannot stop a shipment of Russian uranium destined for French nuclear plants from being processed at a site on its territory. What's the reason the Olaf Scholz government gave for its inability to stop Russian uranium shipments? That Russian atomic fuel is not covered by European Union sanctions on Russia. Germany, on its part, is weaning itself off nuclear energy. Nevertheless, it is required to process France-bound uranium shipments. France is heavily dependent on nuclear power for its electricity needs, as is the United States. Russia controls over 35% of the global enriched uranium market. Although Moscow produces only 6% of the world's uranium, it controls 46% of the world's uranium processing market. Russia houses one of the world's largest uranium reserves, totaling around 486,000 tons, the equivalent of 8% of global supply. All major countries are heavily reliant on uranium processed in Russia for their energy requirements. Therefore, sanctioning uranium would have been suicidal for the developed world. The United States imported about 14% of its uranium and 28% of all enrichment services from Russia in 2021. The United States relies on nuclear energy for 20% of its electricity supplies. The country relies on CSTO countries, no less, led by Russia, for about 60% of its total uranium requirements. CSTO is the Russian equivalent of NATO. In 2020, Russia accounted for 16.5% of uranium imported into the United States and 23% of enriched uranium for US commercial nuclear reactors. Therefore, sanctioning Russian uranium would have crippled the United States' energy sector, mimicking European plight in the world's largest economy. The West is convinced that it is sufficiently punishing Russia, although Moscow has been quite successful in keeping energy prices up globally and finding alternative markets for itself. Ukraine has been demanding for the longest time now that in order for Russia to really feel the pinch, it is critical that its uranium exports are sanctioned. However, America and Europe have refused to oblige. What does that tell you about the West's commitment to Ukraine? Sure, Ukraine is being helped. It is being armed and defense manufacturers in the West are getting their coffers filled to the brim. But when it comes to the United States and its allies sacrificing their own comforts for the sake of Ukraine, they are seen withdrawing into an unnoticeable corner. Europe never intended for it to get struck by an energy crisis. It thought Russia would continue supplying it with all the gas it needs despite being slapped with a barrage of sanctions. That raises an even more important point. Will Russia stop uranium exports to countries it views as hostile? Where will that leave countries like the United States, France, and the United